Hello, and welcome to another episode of Latina Life with Jen and Milena. We have a truly special guest today. She's a writer, an executive producer, an actress, a comedian, someone you have seen on your TV set probably every Fridays on NBC now. Let's just get right to it and welcome the star of Lopez versus Lopez, Mayan Lopez. Mayan, thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you, Milena, for having me.
Of course, we are so excited to have you. I know you're very busy, so this means a lot to us and just giving us your time and for all of our Latinas to just dive in and really get to know you differently than how people see you on other shows and stuff. So thank you. So we're going to dive right in, and we just want to know about like your upbringing. Let people know about your childhood and how was it like for you as a Latina here in Los Angeles?
Oh, very interesting. Well, born and raised here in Los Angeles. My mom is first generation Cuban. My dad is fifth or sixth generation Mexican American. My dad's side of the family um really was from like Oaxaca, Zacatecas, but five generations of farm workers. And my grandparents on my mom's side immigrated from Cuba when Castro came into power. They were doctors, medical students that once he came into power, my aunt came home singing communist songs and they just knew that they had to get out. Um,
Mm.
so they wrote handwritten letters. They were able to find one hospital, not speaking any English, came here. And my grandfather ended up, like, long story short, becoming an aviational medicine doctor for NASA and then became
Wow.
president of medical at Eastern Airlines. And then my grandmother was an anesthesiologist. And so coming from definitely, quote unquote, like immigrant mentality that,
Mhm.
and also the American dream of like how hard you have to work. And both of my parents are, self-made people. So I think that is part of what I love about the culture, but it's having to work. And I think in my childhood, it's very obvious with the show. My father wasn't very present, and so he doesn't really talk with a lot of his family. So I was more in the Cuban side,
Mhm,
with like touches of the Mexican side.
mhm.
But it was always a very happy home. I loved, well, actually not, but um, the absent, father, my dad, the machismo, especially, not really talking about a lot of feelings. But it was happy. There were parts that were very, very happy. And I felt very proud to be Latina, but growing up in school, I was one of the only ones to be.
Mhm.
There were not many kids growing up that were, and I don't speak Spanish. I had a speech delay, so I was having trouble learning English. I didn't speak till I was like two. So I'm the only one in my family that doesn't speak Spanish. And it's also very hard when I was learning it in school because my parents would be like, that's not how you talk.
Mhm.
That's not, I was like, that's not it.
Right.
Or when
Yeah.
I try to practice, they wouldn't want to like slow down for me
Mm.
either. So I kind of understand it more than when I speak it. So that's kind of something that I've like struggled with still in my career. Like I'm trying to learn. But that's something where I haven't felt like very Latina. Like I feel like that's something that's missing, or people don't think I'm Latina enough.
Mm.
Mhm.
That's not the case. That's very part of
Yeah.
my identity. And it's something that I've grown into and been very proud of. And I think with my dad watching his career really take off with the first show, I saw how hard he had to work, and both of my parents, my mom being executive producer and a casting director. So they were really much a team and with representation. And I got to see,
Yeah.
firsthand and how it's changed over 20 years. But, my family going without because my dad wouldn't take a role as a gangbanger, or he wouldn't take a role as a drug dealer because he didn't want to put that out there in media, and just kind of going out there and seeing the representation, seeing how much his career has made people happy and feel
Mhm.
represented, and what he's meant to the culture is very much inspired me to like where I am today.
And I think, you know, it's surprising because I think we have a lot of similarities, even though we're different generations, right? Like for me, my dad wasn't present. So I feel like that obviously affects you down the line when you're just with your mom. You're still happy and all those things. And also, I was the only Latina in school as well, you know, so I also grew up that way. Jen, I know, can also identify to that because she was also one of the very few. And it's
I
funny
was the
because it's
only
like,
Latina in Beverly High, so everybody thought I was Persian. You know, that
yeah,
it
Yes,
was
I was
good,
either
yeah,
Persian,
easier to know Persian.
Armenian. Like I would come over to my friends' houses and I was like, oh, I'm just a cousin you haven't met. You know?
yeah. But it's
Exactly.
the way that we're identified, right?
Yes.
Or we're put in like these categories. And what's funny also that you're saying is like, I have some friends who don't speak Spanish
Mhm.
either, but they obviously, you know, look like there's some kind of Latin in their blood. And you're looked at in a different way, which I'm sure like, and they've told me that, you know, I do know Spanish. So I, you know, have, my parents sent me to South America. So that's sort of how I learned. I had no other choice, like being there for 2 months. So everybody's different, but those challenges do affect you down the line because it's like, it's interesting. I don't think a lot of people would have really gotten that. They just assume that because you're Latin, you're going to know both languages and you're just going to
Right.
fit right in. And it's like one way or the other, you don't, right? I just feel like there is so many similarities, even though we're all from different times. Like you're obviously so young compared to myself. And it's very similar though. It's still, we're still saying the same story. Don't you agree, Jen?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And going back to when you mentioned the comment about having a happy, childhood. And like, listen, Latinos, Latinas, we're usually happy people. Even if there's something bad happening, we will find the humor in it. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
mhm.
Absolutely.
You laugh about it. You make jokes about each other. You
Yeah,
know.
completely, completely. And it's funny because I have two kids and they're older, 21 and 18 now. And they don't understand that. Sometimes I feel that, I don't know, I guess maybe I'm a little bit tougher skin. I'm like, listen, if we're not laughing about it, we're going to be sad all the time. Life isn't 100% happy, right? There's ups and downs. It's like a river, it ebbs and flows. There's valleys and peaks, and you just have to learn how to navigate it. And I think as Latinas, we really do that very well, especially when it comes to, getting into like our career and trying to navigate our career and progress. And so, going to that in your career, did you know at an early age that this is what you wanted to do? Or were you like interested? I thought I was gonna be a doctor, and then I realized I was not that great at science. So what did you think?
I wanted to be a performer and an actress since I was 5 years old. Um,
Okay.
I watched Singing in the Rain, and that was my first show,
Mm,
movie that I absolutely loved. And there was a Donald O'Connor that has a number in there called "Make 'Em Laugh,"
yeah.
and it's very physical. And there's like a dummy that he like throws around, and I just like was, oh my God, like physical, being funny. I had my mom go and get me a dummy and I would do the whole act in my living room. And then I
Oh,
saw I Love Lucy. That was really
oh
also
yeah.
the first show. And also, Desi Arnaz. And I saw,
Mhm.
even for then, he was really the first. And I think about even being on a sitcom. Now he created the 3 camera setup that we still use. And so sometimes I'm like, hey, like a Latino is like, that's something that's
Exactly.
really wonderful. And I think she's my biggest inspiration in that. And I was always very a funny kid. I think it definitely, both of my parents are very funny, but inherited like the quick wit of my dad. And I used to get in trouble in school because I just would say the first thing that would come out of my mouth, and then people would laugh. And I got in trouble. My mom was like, "That was mean what you said, Maya." And I go, "Mean, but funny." Like I always go back to that because I was like 7 and I'm like, "Yep, what
It's
I've gone through." But my
it's
parents,
our culture's way.
exactly, like, hey, being raised by a stand-up, like I always kind of joke sometimes that it was always Lopez versus Lopez because sometimes, my dad, his father left him when he was 3 months old, and his mother left when he was 10, and he was raised by my grandma Benny. And you know the character Grandma Benny, but she was
Mhm.
a hard woman, and that's putting it lightly.
Mhm.
Childhood was quite horrific. And so, you know, I think that's also which we try to talk about on the show, is that there's just generational trauma, and his generation, where I would try to hug him and he would push me off of him as like a young
Mm.
child, and that would,
Mm.
you know, kind of mess with me, because he didn't know what to do with me, because
Right.
I he never had that.
Right.
And, you know,
Right.
it's taken me decade, you know, over a decade
Yeah.
to figure it out,
Yeah.
but I understand all of that now. But as, you know, a kid, you're just, that's like the first man that's loves you, and it's
Mhm.
something where he just couldn't. He obviously used that pain and put it into beautiful art, but
Mhm.
you know, that's, yeah, it's that darkness. And I'm going back to, um yeah, I'm trying to, like, what was I'm like trying to go off
No,
on it.
actually,
Oh, with the
you've hit a really interesting topic. It's interesting and it's very important. Because you with this show, you and your dad are really peeling away like the layers and really kind of giving a new, I think, birth to what the Latina and Latino relationship should be between, you know, the family, father, daughter, how it's okay to have somewhat of a dysfunctional thing. It's okay to still grow and learn from each other. And I want to talk about the TikTok that you made because that is what inspired this, but it was obviously very sensitive, I think, to your mom. I don't know if both of your dad thought about it. Let's talk about that because sometimes when it comes to sensitive subjects, Latinos and the Latino culture, you'd like to not tell, not share, but sometimes it's important to do so. So, why did you feel? Tell us about the TikTok, what
Yes.
your parents felt about it, and then why it was important for you to share it.
So a little bit of history, if people don't know, almost 20 years ago, my mom donated a kidney to my dad. He
Mhm.
was born with a kidney defect. He didn't know that he was sick till he was in his 40s. And he was doing the George Lopez show at 20% kidney function at one point. Um, and it was a 1 in 6 million chance that they were a match, donated a kidney. And then my father very publicly had kind of got canceled.
yeah.
He cheated on my mother with prostitutes, and it was over the National Enquirer, and it was everywhere. And so it's something that still follows me.
Mhm.
And you know, people still comment about it, and I'm like, I'm glad that you're angry, but it's, you know, it's almost 11, you know, years,
Yeah.
so it's okay. But they still use that as ammunition to, you know,
Mhm.
still to this day try to bring the show down sometimes.
Mhm.
And that's, I think
Mhm.
that's like we did an episode Bucket Crab, like trying to bring people down in the community.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
Yep.
but someone made a TikTok commenting on that and making fun of it. Just like, okay, whatever. But I just got it got millions of views, and I just got tagged in it. And I don't know why, but something just kind of shifted in me. And I was like, you know, I never said anything publicly about it, because it was always like, shh, which, you know,
Yeah.
understand.
Right. Yeah. Of course.
But I was like, you know what? I had a good feeling about it. And I was like, I'm just going to make something. Like, who knows what's going to happen of it? I studied at Second City in Chicago in sketch comedy. When I wasn't when trying to act, I was still always wanting to perform. And that's really the foundation of a lot of my training, as well as, you know, acting classes, etc. And so this was during the pandemic, and I still wanted to find a way to create, and social media and TikTok was a way to have that instantaneously and to connect with millions of people. So I was like, you know what? Who knows who's gonna see it? And I'll go, well, I'm a comedian. I'm not afraid to look silly. And I was like, I'll twerk upside down on a wall. And I'll put the text around it. I'm like, well, whatever. And so I showed family photos, and I go, that's not true. And then around the twerking, I said, my mom still gets hella money in alimony. She's better off. Like, we're a funny family. And along with, I also had a series called why do my divorced parents still act like they're married? Because my
Mhm.
dad being
Mm.
compromised, it was really the first time we came together as a family.
Mhm.
But that TikTok was the one that our showrunner and fellow co-creator Debbie Wolf saw scrolling on TikTok at 2 a.m. and
Mhm.
she related because her father was also unfaithful. So it's already something that she connected with
Yeah.
immediately and saw the other TikToks that I had made. And she goes, oh my God, this could be a show. And so my dad and I would have never in a million years thought to work with each other, even when it was almost 4 years ago now. And we weren't even that close at that time. And
Mhm.
but we were approached with the idea, and I think it was an unspoken thing of our in the community, and I think at large, it's the estrangement and coming back together and being at the age that I am, seeing your parents as people and having
Mhm.
understanding, try to get that healing for yourself because it may have been your parents' mistake, but it's your responsibility it's your life. And so, we came into the room and we just pitched it. And what I learned from that is, my mom didn't want me to post that TikTok. She's like, Maya, this is too much. But I just had this feeling. I'm like, I was like, I know that something's gonna come good is gonna come out of it. And I just trusted my instincts. And I think if I didn't press a button, it's I just feel
Mhm.
so incredibly lucky. But also the bigger thing of that was I trusted my instincts and I was being able to
Yeah.
be brave. And as we said, not talking about things, it's still a lot of people think that it's weak to be vulnerable, and actually it's the
Mm.
Yep.
bravest thing that you can do. And I've this show I've gone on quite a journey, and even I think about I'm only 2 years into my career, really 2 or 3, and I'm such a different person because I was so shy. I never done sitcom, never done a show like this at all. And I remember taking the promotional picture for the first poster of the show, and I had a shirt that said phenomenally Latina. And I was standing there proudly taking these pictures, and I just started to tear up and I started to cry because I was like, oh, I get to be we're in this space. And that
Yeah.
Yes.
hasn't
You're
Mhm.
representing.
100%.
always wanted to do that. And I think in my life, I always, when I haven't felt, very Latina, or even in auditions, it would be like ethnically ambiguous.
Mhm.
You would
Yeah.
go for all these different things, or there
Yeah.
wasn't roles,
Mhm.
or like, oh, I could be Italian, I could be this. But that was something that now, as the show has gone on, I've like really honed into that. And I'm so glad that it's growing and people are enjoying it, not just in our culture, but universally.
Absolutely. And I think what you're saying, I just want to bring to light because I do think that a lot of people assume that because of who your parents are, you already had this like open door, right? Not realizing that number one, you did all the work. You got the education that you got. You weren't just like, oh, I think I want to act. And then
Mhm.
were able to just get a script. I think people need to understand that you did the work prior to, and that prepared you, because I feel like a lot of people would assume that you just got it because of
I mean, it
who
helped.
your parents
I'll
are.
say I'll own the
Of
Nepo baby.
course.
It helped. Of course it did. But, those doors can open and you have to walk through them. And I think if I can say, we've had Rita Moreno and we had Rita Reverse
Mm-hmm.
this season. And I remember seeing her and she was so loud. And I was like, I love how loud you are. And I told her, and she goes, that's such a funny thing to say. But I think, and sometimes, like, Jen, when we weren't filming, you were saying, sometimes we have to be quiet. We want to be Latinas in the workplace feel like they have to be very humble and go to the
Mhm.
ground, just work. And that's something that's wonderful about it. It's like we work and we hustle, baby, and
Yeah.
do that. But when she said that, you like don't be afraid to be loud and to fight for what you want, and to say that, because even, yes, I'm on a network show, but we're still, you know a minority still.
Absolutely.
It's still, I still have to fight every single day. And it's not something that I am resentful about and I don't mind, but it's something that still fuels me where I'm like, I'm gonna make myself known. I have that power. I know where I come from. Like, let's go.
And I think that that's so important because it's like there is a lot of responsibility on you representing a Latino family and that everybody gets to watch universally. And I have to say there has so many challenges. Can you tell us professionally like some of the challenges that you feel that you have to go through on a daily? Because I don't think a lot of people realize, they think, oh, just got it made. And that's just not the
Oh,
case.
I will say this. I stumped my psychiatrist because he was like, I don't know how to, he's like, in 40 years, you're someone that in your job, you are playing a fictionalized version of yourself with the person that traumatized you for like millions of people and putting yourself back into those situations, but you're doing it in a show and having to wrap it up in 20. He's like,
Mhm.
and I always like kind of go back
Yeah,
to that's the
what are we
kind of
gonna do?
explain it. But yeah, it hasn't been easy at all. It brought up a lot of things and already learning how to do it and being triggered like really it was the first year was really survival, and I just learned how resilient I was, but it was that this was the dream and I knew that I was like, I've survived worse than this. And what really, when the show wasn't airing, I'm like, I'm okay with being uncomfortable and pushing through this because someone's going to watch this and they're going to see themselves and I'm it's going to go forward, and that was what sometimes the only thing that I could hold on to. And it is a good responsibility, but still every day to when we go into work, it's something that fuels us, and that I feel it very grateful to be a woman in this position and wanting to bring more as I go into my career, that I'm on the other side and we get to tell our stories because no one gets to tell our stories better than we do. And
Mhm.
yeah, I've gotten messages from fans that, not all families can be fixed, but they watch the show and they see themselves and, oh, I never had that conversation with my parent, but I can imagine that's what it would be like, and that I'm taking that away. Or, even seeing my dad, as I commend him a lot because, in the show, hey, he's a 63-year-old trying to be sober Mexican,
Yeah.
and he was an alcoholic, and, obviously he's going to stumble, but I even think that representation as well of him being of, the baby boomer,
Mhm.
being able to be vulnerable and push himself for the family, and for, it's not too late in your life to get healing,
Change.
right, and
Yeah.
change and have a sense of acceptance in the relationship, because I think that's also a very, there are things that you just have to accept, that that's the best it's going to be, and
Mhm.
enjoy. And I
And I
just
think that's, oh, go ahead, Jen.
Well, this is such a special show, obviously very, personal and very close to you in your first time being an EP on the show. Have you gotten into, a scenario where maybe it was uncomfortable for you to kind of keep the authentic feeling of the show? Like, has there ever been where you kind of put into like an awkward situation where maybe some other people thought, hey, maybe we should do this with your character and this storyline, kind of wanting to tell like the story the way they think that might be right, but it's not truly authentic. And was that difficult, like speaking up?
there have been moments where, yeah, I do have to fight for my character sometimes a little bit. But in the way that of how she approaches things, because like she's very, it's interesting because sometimes like she handles things differently than I do, but then also she has a different dad. Um, but I think we really do have a collaborative process. I think of like Quentin and Mayan's engagement at the end of season 2. Um, they just wanted Mayan to propose, um, and Quentin not to propose to her, but I like really fought for it. And I was like, no, she needs that because she didn't get that from her father, and she needs a man that like chooses her.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up being like
Yeah.
a beautiful scene. And or there's been many others of me, I think with the quince. I never had a quince in real life, and that was also something that was real that, Mayan wanted. It was for the dog, but it was really for her, and she got to have that moment. And so, I've been grateful that they've let me go forward, and NBC has been a really wonderful partner that we really haven't gotten a lot of no's with where we can go with the story, because I think how authentic it is, it resonates with people. And even in the run throughs, like people are silent, they're crying, like it's really a beautiful process. And I think that's going to help me as I create more in the future of, that's what hits. It's like, we can have, I like to think of the finale of the second season, we have a whole with the pinata, and we're all hitting it with George. And the last scene, it's so, that's where we have heart but also laughter, and you break. And but that's life. That's life.
Yeah.
Like something really serious can happen, and you can make a joke, and then it washes everything, away
Yeah.
clean and make it bright.
Absolutely. And that's what I like about the show, is that it shows a different kind of family. Like there's no more standard family, right? There's no more mom, dad, and the kids. It's
Right.
now like, I know a lot of families that's like mom, Tia, my
Yes.
cousins, and my friend is always here, and or having a baby. I have a lot of friends who are having babies before they get married, and all,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like
You have
all
your village,
like
you have your tribe. It's family takes on very many different, exactly, roles.
exactly. And that's what I appreciate about it, because it doesn't fictionalize this like perfect family, because
Mhm.
no one's perfect. But that's what I really love about your show, is because you think about that and you really are putting forth real life, but in a comedic, funny way. So for the young actresses, the out there, Latinos, all of us, what kind of advice has stuck with you from just anybody?
Yeah, from anybody. I think it's hard to say, like, just to keep going and to lock in, but I think every little step that you take, I think, is really important, and just finding those small um goals. I think my to trust in the process, and just to not give, I don't know, it's like to God. Um
To not give up, I guess, because you
yeah,
never did. You just kept going. I mean, I have to give it to you. You really have put
and to
yourself out there.
bring people up with you, and find your tribe of people that can support you during those times, to remember like where you come from, and to always keep going forward with that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because I mean, you really are doing that. I mean, you're a female executive, you know, producer of a television show. You are really opening doors the way Rita Moreno opened doors for us,
Mhm.
even to work in the industry. So that must have also been magical when you had the opportunity to work with her, because she really is such a person that has opened that door and paved the way for myself, for all of
Mm.
us. So,
Now, one thing she told me the last time I I saw her, because she was very much a lifeline for me when she was there, and I think we related a lot of how she's had to push through and play things that were very close to her life, and the stories that I heard from her of just, they're appalling, of what she had to go through.
Mm.
But one thing that she told me, because there's always that voice that will bring you down or make you feel self-conscious, and like that little girl, or that your inner child. And she told me
Mhm.
that, one, to tell her to go to your room, and that like in within yourself, like tell her or tell, them that you're going to be okay, that you put them away, but that she's 92 and she still has that voice that will always, be there to bring her down. And I think that that was something that was very illuminating to me, because I always thought, oh, I have to heal. I have to make sure that that kid, it gets everything figured out inside and then I can go forward. But I think hearing that, I was like, oh, that's never going to go away. And I think that's something that really helped me, because I was like, oh, I can be that self parent and I can, keep filling my cup of just trying to be the best person. It's not, there are moments that I think, who knows what after this show, I hope the show goes on for many years and many seasons, but I've seen where, who knows after this, it might be hard to find another role, or I'll have to, create it for myself. But I know that if like I can depend on me.
Absolutely. I like that. I could depend on me. That's, yeah, because who else? If you can't depend on yourself, it's really hard to depend on anybody else.
And one thing I do want to note, in addition to, I think, breaking down walls, on TV for everyone to see, but you work with the National Alliance of Mental Illness. You're an ambassador, and that too, which is part of the story, as well, right? We need to be mentally healthy. Everybody is. And I think it's super important. I mean, I just kudos to you and for, other people like Simone Biles and Selena Gomez for speaking out about it, because this is topic that is very hard to talk about in our culture. And having somebody like you who brings it forth on a storyline on a national platform or international platform and television show, but also being a part of a organization like this is extremely important. How is it easy? Does it get easier talking about it, for you? And is it rewarding when you hear any of like the fan feedback?
It is helpful. I will still say that it's still hard. You have to work for your happy. I still get incredibly overwhelmed sometimes and very nervous, and it's something that you have to I make peace with, and I'm very I'm proud of it. I'm glad that I've gotten messages. I think about the anxiety episode. I think that was very early in season 1, and I took,
Mhm.
an anti-anxiety medication, and I wanted to make that very clear. I was like, I want to physically take the pill on TV. Like I was like, I want to
Mhm.
take it,
Mhm.
open the
So
bottle,
important.
swallow it, and have my dad have, then he had the anxiety attack, and I was the talking him down and showing
Right.
that process of a man also having an anxiety
Yeah.
attack,
Yeah.
and um like bringing him down from it. And that was something that I got a lot of people commenting on, and they're like, oh, you take medication? I go, oh yeah, I've been on medication for over 10 years. It's not something weak to be on medication. You think you're crazy, you think you get dependent on it. It's brain chemistry. It's nothing that,
Mhm.
that's some of the most natural things. And I
Mhm.
know without, sometimes I still have a medication that calms me down that, I take um when I get anxiety attacks and I get,
Yeah.
overwhelmed. And I feel very happy that I get to talk about that, because I've struggled with depression and anxiety my whole life basically.
Mhm.
Um and it's something that I know without like my mom that I wouldn't be here. And
Mhm.
it's like I'm very proud to have a mother like that, who's a strong, woman that, taught me how to be that. And it's something that when you see someone, you don't feel alone. It can be something as simple as that. You're like, oh, she takes it too, or that take
Yeah.
oh, because people just want to feel validated, and they want to feel that their story, they're seen, and that it's normal. It's not anything bad. Taking away the shame that
Yes.
that
Yes.
from it, that it's not that, you know to undo all of that, or I just try to, if I can help, make a light layer go
Yeah.
away. And
Yeah.
that's
No, you absolutely are. I mean, it's a topic Milena and I talk about. I know my family and I talk about, and it's just different too. Generations are different as well.
Mhm.
Just wrapping your mind around that. I know hopefully we'll have a therapist on the episode too. We've been talking about that to talk about there's just different perspectives from younger generation, different generation, men, women, and how to embrace. I think the new perspective is very important because the world is changing and there's a lot. And if we don't help each other, empower each other, we only hurt each other, right? So, and you are empowering us all, Mayan. Thank you so much. This is
I
such a
know,
wonderful
Mayan.
conversation.
Thank
I wish we
you.
could go
Honestly,
longer. We're going to have a part two later.
we can't wait to see what's next for you because there's so many other things that I know you do, and not only for the community, but just as a whole. I mean, I see all your fun adventures, and I just cannot wait to see you again very soon. And I know the show's going to do great. Fridays on NBC, Lopez
Tune
versus
in,
Lopez.
Lopez versus Lopez.
Because I have to say, this Lopez is amazing. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Absolutely. Yes. And so for all of our Latinas out there, our friends, familia, amigas, listen to Latina Life with Jenna Milena on all of your podcast, streaming platforms. And tune in to to Lopez versus Lopez.
Yeah.
So until la próxima, besos y abrazos a todas and later.
Bye. Thank you, Mayan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We went a little over, so thank you.